Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that leads to a rewarding career. I am Mark Stucker.
And I am Anika Madden. It is Thursday, October 18th. And welcome to episode number 38. What is the National Merit Scholarship Program? In this week's news, we are digging deeper on student loan default rates, and we are in chapter 38 of 171 answers. And Mark is explaining what the National Merit Scholarship Program actually is. And it's time for this week's question segment to be dedicated to our bonus content. And we are diving into the 10 most common mistakes that students make in the college admissions process. And this week, Mark interviews an amazing high school student, Miss Chika Nwosu. She's a high school senior student, and they are talking about her whole college search process.
Listeners, if you could only see how Nick and I react when we get emails from you all. We're like little kids. We're like texting each other. Did you see that one? That one wasn't that neat. Wasn't that cool? And we got to say, Marilyn, you all really stepped up. We have multiple emails from Marilyn just in the last 24 hours. You guys totally inspire us. And even when you have constructive criticism, it only makes us better. So shout out to our listeners. Let's dedicate this episode to our listeners.
That's right. Shout out to you.
Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
Mark, this week's article is all about digging deeper on student loan default rates. And this is found inside Higher Ed, and this is written by Mr. Paul Fain. And Mark, I'm going to start with I just want to start with this statement, but I do want us to go ahead and define what a loan default actually is. And so let me just read this. So federal data released last year revealed that a student loan default crisis among borrowers who are Black or who attended for-profit colleges, with roughly half of both groups defaulting within 12 years after first enrolling into college. So I want to start there, but I do want to pause and Mark, let's explain what a default is. And I'm going to give you my best snapshot of that. And that is that you stop paying your loan payment, on time every month. And I'm not sure if it's 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, or how many months it is, but your loan goes into a certain status where it becomes very difficult for you as an individual to acquire credit at that point. That's what I know. Fortunately, I haven't gotten into the default, so I don't know the details around that, Mark. And I'm gonna let you fill this in terms of just having access to certain types of credit and all that good stuff. But it's you just stopping on your loans, and it's serious. It's nothing to be played with in terms of keeping up with your student loan payments. So Mark, you want to fill in on that a little bit?
Yeah. So while it's true that technically a student loan is considered to be delinquent as soon as you miss payment, the federal government is quite generous, much more generous than private student lenders, because federal student loans don't officially go into default until they are unpaid for 270 days.
Oh,
so it's basically going 9 months, without making payment. But when you go into default, it is not good because the full balance becomes due right away. You lose access to deferment and forbearance options, which is like postponing your payments because you're going through tough times. And sometimes fees of up to 1/4 of the balance can be tacked on right away. And it can be much harder to get access to credit, such as what you need to get a rent an apartment and other forms of credit, obviously cars, houses, things like that. So serious, as you said.
Right. So Mark, let me throw out a couple other statistics that they throw out here. And I just want to point out that this is all done by the Brookings Institution. This is where all this research is coming from. And one of the other statements it makes is that up to 40% of students who took out loans in 2004 may default by 2023. And that in itself is disturbing, right? And then we go down, and again, I want to really highlight the focus on this being about Black borrowers and people who go to these for-profit institutions. And I'm going to say one more, Mark, and then I'm going to let you take this away, because it says that the federal data show that 70% of all students who entered in college in 2004 and 28% of those who took out student loans defaulted by 2016, according to this study. And among Black borrowers, 48.7% defaulted compared to 21.4% of white non-Hispanic borrowers. And one other thing that I found in this captivating, Mark, is that a lot of these defaults are on modest amounts of loans. Modest to me meaning not like ridiculous amounts, like they're just defaulting. And so I know they go into diving into, the factors onto why this is happening. And it hit on my best guess on, financial education, number one. And just having that support system and just having access to knowledge on the reasons, just access to knowledge. Let's just stop there. So Mark, go ahead and take this away.
Yeah, and it's a great article by Paul Fain, but it is a very provocative article. It's one of those articles that raises almost more questions than it answers, because the bottom line is that nobody really knows how you can explain this racial disparity gap between Black and white. By the way, Hispanic and Latinos have a 35% default rate. So, in the in-between sort of where the Black and the white students are, or this high default rate with for-profit colleges. Because the first thing, you would think of is things like, well, maybe the Caucasian families came from wealthier families, because Black net worth is like 1/14 of white net worth. So you figure, okay, maybe wealthy parents bailed them out, or maybe people didn't get jobs. And so the interesting thing about this study is that they controlled for a lot of those characteristics. Like they looked at parent education levels. They looked at home ownership levels, and that decreased the gap a little bit. It took it from a 28-point gap to a 14 percentage point gap. But even when they looked at things like, okay, let's compare grade point average to grade point average. Let's look at whether or not the defaulter actually got a job when they came out of school. Let's look at what their job status was. Let's look at their income to debt ratio. There still was this stubborn and largely statistical significant gap of 11 percentage points. And so it's just kind of led people to be a little baffled as to what it is. And so there are lots of different theories. Like you said, one is around education, miseducation. One thing the studies haven't done is haven't looked at the other amount of debt that these people might have. Maybe it's, credit card debt and car payments. And so, it's a little perplexing. And the same is true, of course, with the for-profits, because their default rates are astronomical as well. And so, what are your takeaways from that, Anika, when you look at this data?
Yeah. So my big thing was, okay, so what? Because a lot of this isn't surprising to me.
Right.
And one of the statements, again, one of the things that Mr. Fain points out is that the better we can understand what drives these stark gaps, the better policymakers can target their efforts to reduce defaults. And for me, that was a powerful statement, because again, you hear all these things like, duh, yeah, I get it. But again, when it comes to policy and when it comes to having things in writing and just really understand, just having that distinct and clear understanding of why these types of things are happening, is where some people just don't get. I mean, I might get it, and I might be, that might be my area of life, but some people just don't get that. And some of these people that don't get are in these important places that have the power and have the ability to affect change. So I appreciated him pointing that out in terms of this just really needing to be documented in terms of policy change, period. So that was my biggest takeaway from this, Mark.
Well, I definitely feel like a lot of people, they really don't take it seriously when they sign up for loans. Like I see two completely different extremes when it comes to loan, and I'm constantly trying to sort of challenge both extremes. One is never, ever, ever under any circumstance will I ever take out a loan. And I will challenge people. I'll say, have you ever had a car payment? Have you ever do you have a loan for your house? Okay, you can't tell me you're willing to take a loan out for a depreciable asset like a car. Okay, and you won't invest in yourself for your future. So that's one extreme. But the other extreme is an inordinate amount of debt. And I'm constantly having to challenge people as well who say, you know what, I'll just make a way, or God will just make a way, or I'll just get scholarships. And I feel like there can be a a sort of lackluster approach sometimes to taking out loans. And I think people need to really read the fine print. People need to not assume they're going to get all these scholarships once they're in college that they didn't get before they got in. People need to use loan repayment calculators to actually see what that amount of loan, that payment looks like. Because one of the things is people, it doesn't hit them really what that payment looks like. People also need to try really, really hard to not have other forms of consumer debt, like the car payments, like the credit cards, right? So that involves some impulse control. That involves discipline. I can't tell you how many people I work with who have car payments that are completely outrageous given their income. And they're wondering why they can never afford college. And another thing, and this is a really good practice, is when you take out a student loan, you don't have to start making payments until you either drop below half-time status, drop out of college, or 6 months after graduation. So it has a tendency to make people become negligent and to actually almost forget that they have this loan out there. So one really, really good payment practice is to start making payments right away while you're in school, even if it's $25 a month, because it will, allow it to register, wow, I actually have this loan. So those are just some tips. Read a fine print. Listen, there's a reason why the federal direct loan program has caps in place. They're put in place so that students will not take out inordinate and unsustainable amounts of debt, and be very, very, very careful about exceeding those numbers. Of course, we talked about that in episode 9. High income occupations can allow you to take out more debt as long as you graduate. Right. But read the fine print and really run those repayment calculators, because you'll see what you're in for. Now, as far as the for-profit colleges, there's a lot of fine print in there that people don't read. And a lot of times those for-profit colleges don't always lead to as much employment as nonprofit, colleges do. Their degrees are not always seen as credible. Now, there are exceptions, because in really high demand fields, they need people from everywhere, but that's also something to think about.
All right. So, Mark, let me ask you this quick question, because
Sure.
I wonder what role the counselor. I know we're talking largely to parents. I know this podcast is focused is targeted mostly to parents, but for the college counselors out there that are listening, what active role can they play in this? Because you hear about counselor, it's all about placement. Oh, they got in this school. They got in this school. Oh, they got in this school. That's the big hoopla. But where is there often or not loan counseling when it comes to these counselors in these high schools when they're getting these kids to these certain destinations? Is that happening? Should it happen more? Like, what's happening with that?
So here are my thoughts on that. I think for the most part, the counselors I know do a really good job of warning students not to exceed and have unsustainable amounts of debt. The problem is that the national average of counselors to students in high school is 350 to 1. That's the national average. And it's virtually impossible when you have a caseload of 350 to get to everybody.
Right.
So, if there was more of an investment to lower those ratios down, I think you'd see a lot less of this. But, it's really just virtually impossible with a caseload that long, because think of all the other things you have to do as well. You can't spend your whole time just talking about this.
Right.
You got to do all other aspects of the process.
Right.
So I think that's one of the bigger problems. If you're in a private school situation, it can be very different. You might have a 40 to 1 ratio. Obviously, if you're working with a private college coach, even less. But that's not normal. That's not the norm out there. Most students are coming from public schools and they're not having access to the counseling.
Right. Okay. So be aware is the big takeaway, right?
Absolutely. And listeners, you might want to go back to listen to episode 9, because in there kind of lay out a maximum amount of student debt that you should consider taking and don't exceed it.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Okay, friends, this is the part we consider our walkthrough of the college admission process. I wrote a book called 171 Answers, and each week we go chapter by chapter through that book. We take a couple key points and we share them in order to help you with the college process. So we're in a section where we have 18 consecutive questions that relate to some aspect of standardized testing. And this particular week, we're looking at what is the National Merit Scholarship Program. So Anika, quick question for you. What did you think it was? Had you heard of it? What was your impression of the National Merit Scholarship Program?
I have heard of it. Didn't care too much about it.
Hey, you're keeping it real. I love it.
I gotta keep it real because I do know that there is a very, very small number of people who actually get that thing. And I just rest on that. I totally rest on that. That like strips away a layer of stress, right? But I'm gonna tell you though, I talked to Ned. So Ned just took it last week as a junior in high school.
Yeah, how'd it go?
She actually said it went pretty well. She said it was one part that was like kind of hard, but she guessed, and she was like, well, you don't get penalized for parts you get wrong or whatever.
You know what, Anika? We should let people know what the antecedent of it is.
Okay,
right. So we're talking about because we're talking about the National Merit Scholarship Program, but in order to qualify, that's based off PSAT.
Yes, sorry.
11th grade PSAT. So Anika says she didn't take the National Merit Scholarship. She took the.
That's right.
To be continued.
The PSAT that gets you into the merit scholarship. And then so I read your chapter. I'm like, 1 in 200 scholars get that National Merit Scholarship. So that validated my lack of interest. But I do know that it's very it's a indicator of how well you're going to do on the SAT, and that's especially important for us because Janaea has, I think, Mark, she's already decided that she wants to take the SAT versus the ACT. So
I knew that 6 months ago.
Yeah,
when she hated the ACT.
She hated
That's no news. You're not breaking any new news. You're not breaking any new news with that one,
right? So, but I'll tell you one thing I did know was all these levels, Mark. I had no idea that all these levels of finalists and recommended and program recognition, all this stuff existed. So, I'll let you dive into that a little bit more. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
All right, so just give listeners a bit of an overview. So. In the 11th grade in October, nationally, students take the PSAT, and if they do exceptionally well, they qualify for the National Merit Scholarship Program. It started in 1955, so it's more than 60 years old now, and it's the National Merit Scholarship Course is a nonprofit organization that just wants to reward exceptional student behavior or performance, and so they want to honor the top scholars in the country. And of course, this is one way to test the entire country. And so they've come up with this program, and depending on how well you do, you can qualify for some benefits. And so they have 5 levels, as Anika mentioned. The first level is program recognition. So there are about 1.6 million students who take the PSAT every year. It's taken at your local high school, and normally the 11th grade is deemed the official year. And so of these students, these 1.6 million, there are 50,000 that get program recognition. So about the top 3% get program recognition. And program recognition is kind of like a nice, sort of slap on the back. Good job. Good attaboy. No moolah, no money, but you do get some recognition. And these 50,000 are apportioned according to the size of the state. So, they look at the size of the state and they apportion them out. And so that's kind of level 1, top 50,000. The next level is what's called a commended scholar. And that is something that's more recognized. You'll see commended scholars oftentimes recognized in graduation programs. 34,000 students get commended scholar status. And then the third level is semifinalists, which is 16,000 students. Now, all of these are based on the selection index, which is basically just based on your score, your reading, writing, language, and math score. And so there's a formula where they double count certain portions of each test to come up with a number, to come up with a score. So far, it's 100% based on scores, Anika, and that means that there are people at this point that are program recognition, commended scholar, semifinalists that have not done well in school, because all of us who are in education know of people. In fact, this is interesting we say this. So just today, I had a session at 4:00 with a student and a parent, and the mom was telling us, a kid mom, and the mom was telling me how her oldest son does amazing on these standardized tests. And he was doing that with 2 Fs. So, but it's true. Like when I was at West Tonic, I did this 5-year study I looked at our students on academic distinction. which are the top performers, and I looked at students of concern, which were students who were struggling. And then I went back and looked at their standardized tests. And I found that some of the students that were struggling the most aced the test, because a lot of times students, it's not the majority, but a lot of times it's not uncommon. You can have these amazing test takers, but guess what? They're not organized. They're not motivated. They're not disciplined, or maybe they got emotional challenges going on in life, family problems, whatever, and it precludes their ability to do well in school. So far, a program.
So Mark, hold. Let me stop you right there. So what does that mean in the admissions process? Because if we're applying to these schools, right? And I'm not going to even go so deep, an F or D student, because I think that's a different level. Okay. So if let's just say you're a BC student or even an A student, whatever student, and you get it to that level 3, is that something that could be highlighted to whether it's to higher highly selective schools or mid-selective schools, or just the schools that are easier to get into? Where do these levels count? Because I know the higher levels count toward money, but where do these lower levels count?
I think you're probably going to be surprised by my answer here. It can actually work against you, and here's why. One of the most dangerous profiles when you're in admissions is a high test taker with tepid grades, because that is somebody, well, this is a bit of an oversimplification, but I'll tell you how schools tend to look at scores. Scores are seen, somewhat as a reflection of your potential, and grades are seen as your productivity. I know it's an oversimplification, but a high test taker, the expectation will be, okay, school should come easy to you, so I want to see the commensurate grades that are consistent with that testing. And when I see a gap between your scores and your grades, there's a problem, and once again, it's usually either motivation, discipline, organization, and a lot of times it's ADD or ADHD, like the student earlier, that mom I told you about earlier, ADD and ADHD were causing challenges. Or once again, emotional challenges, right? It could be all kinds of things going on in your life that explain it. But that is what we call a flag, and a big red flag in admissions is high scores, low grades. Okay. So when these things aren't going to necessarily do anything for you for most schools, because while there are over 1,000 test optional schools, you really won't find transcript optional schools, meaning schools that say, I don't need to see your grades. You'll see open enrollment schools, meaning we take anybody with a GED or who graduates. Right. But if there's any level of selectivity going on at all on the part of the college, it will be applied to the grades, because how someone does over 4 years is so much better of a reflection of what you can expect from them than how they do in a 4-hour test. It's just that simple.
Wow.
So while these things give you recognition, you get a little bit of status, at awards ceremonies, they're really not doing anything for you for college admissions. Now, after level 3, after the semifinalist level, semifinalist level is 3, and the finalist level is level 4. Semifinalist takes you from 16,000 down to 15,000. Now there's a detailed application. Your academic record is submitted. Recommendations are submitted. Even SATs have to be submitted to match up with your PSATs. Okay. So now you're starting to really take a look at the whole kit and caboodle, right? It's a lot more like a college application where you're looking at, it's more of a holistic review. Okay. And then the last step, of course, is the National Merit Scholar, of which 8,000 people are selected, actually do become scholars. This is completely holistic, includes essays as well, grades, curriculum, leadership, volunteerism, actual SAT scores. All of that is actually evaluated in terms of who becomes a National Merit Scholar. So it's the highest, it's a higher level test on the PSATs, as well as all those things. Okay. And so the question is, what do you get? What do you think, Anika? What do you get for becoming a National Merit Scholar?
I'm going to lean toward money. But I may or may not be wrong. You tell me, but I'm going to say money.
So there's 3 different types of awards. The National Merit Scholarship Corporation itself will give awards that up to $2,500. Okay. One-time $2,500 awards, okay, for these 8,000 students. There are also corporate sponsors, companies that want to honor these top students. And they can give awards that oftentimes may be as large as $5,000. The real big money, however, comes from about 50 colleges and universities in the country that will give oftentimes full scholarships, full tuition, and even full room and board to these National Merit Scholars.
Okay.
They need to indicate they want to go there, to the school. But the thing that a lot of times people don't realize is a lot of times the schools on the list, those 50, are not necessarily the schools that the National Merit Scholars want to go to.
Okay.
So it's true that there are some flagship schools in there like Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, to name a few. But the majority of these full scholarships, Oklahoma is another big one. But the majority of these full scholarships, these students, they want to go to a lot of your swanky, exclusive private schools that are really, prestigious. And those schools aren't giving you squat. They're not, because guess what? No, it's not that they're being mean, but so many of their applicants are already National Merit Scholars. Right. So it doesn't even differentiate you from others in the applicant pool. And so a lot of times I'll say this, Anika, people will be like, I got to start doing test prep. Because I want the National Merit Scholarship. And so I want to start prepping for the PSAT. And so what would you say if someone came to you, we're going to flip roles, okay? Now you're the college coach. And I'm the student. And I'm like, I've heard I should prep for the PSAT in order to get the National Merit Scholarship. What would you say?
No. Nope, and nope. Go take that test and live on with your life. How about that?
Well, I won't go that far. So what I would say, gee, I must have been really harsh in my description of it. So what I would say, the first thing I would say is that you're going to have to test exceptionally well to win it.
Right.
So are you, I would look at your battery of testing already, and I would say, okay, are you kind of in the 97th percentile or above on national testing? Because as much as test prep's not taking someone from the 20th percentile nationally and turning them into the 99th 0.5 percentile. It's just not.
Right.
So I would already take a look at who's already testing really, really high consistently. And then I would have a conversation with them. Because if all you're going to get is $2,500 and you're going to spend more than that on test prep, potentially, right. Do you even want to do that?
Nope.
But if you look at these schools that offer fulls and you're like, hey, I'd be happy to go to any of them. It's a full scholarship. Then, hey, let's get down and do it. Let's test prep, baby. But the point is, it should only be for people that are already really strong testers that are primarily interested in going to one of the schools. That's where the money is. Now, I will say this: there's a lot of prestige in being a National Merit Scholarship finalist. There really is. So if people are interested for the prestige, maybe. But if you're into it for the moolah, unless you're interested in going to one of those colleges that gives the big money, it's really, really questionable whether it's really worth prepping. I'm not a big person who's into prepping for the PSAT. Yeah. I'm really not. I'd rather you prep for the SAT and it ends up helping you for the PSAT.
Hence my lack of concern. And best wishes to you, National Merit Scholars out there in the world.
Isn't it nice to have one thing you don't have to think about in this process?
Yes, it is.
Because you're so solicitous about all this other stuff. So it's one less thing on your mind.
Hallelujah.
It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Mark, it's that time again. We are into this week's question segment that is going to be taken over by our bonus content. And this week, we're going to dive into the 11 most common mistakes that students make in the college admissions process. So please tell us how you like to take this away.
So I've been thinking about this for about a month, Anika. When I drive, when I sleep, when I just walk, just what are the most frequent mistakes that I encounter with the students that I work with? And it's actually great timing because next week, we've got Mr. Brennan Menard talking about the most common parent mistakes. So kind of a good little segue. So I think what I want to do is I'll mention like the first 4 and then see if you have any comments. And then I'll do the next 4 and then the last 3 and just see what you think.
That works.
Does that work? So they're not necessarily ranked from 1 to 11. Like number 1 is the most prevalent. They're just all of them are all common things I see. So number 1 would be students not putting enough time into researching a major / a career that is ideally suited for them. Right. And so almost 40% of students transfer. And we know when they transfer, they take an additional 27 credits to graduate or a full extra year. And so it's very, very important that people go through a very, very thorough process as much as possible to make sure they're actually selecting a major / a career that's right for them. We talked about that a lot in our first few podcasts. And in December, I want to do a much deeper dive into that in our bonus section for that. The next one, number 2, for me would be not having a balanced list on your college list. So, episode 13, we talked about this in length, and I've made a slight little change this year, Nika. In the back there, I said I'd like to see 2 to 4 challenge / reach schools. Believe it or not, I found some students that are so organized that they can actually handle even going to 5. So now I'm going to say 2 to 5 challenge / reach schools, 2 to 5 possible / mid-range schools. Some people call those 50-50 coin toss schools. Some people call them match schools. Some people call them target schools. They're schools that, you may get in, you may not. And 2 to 5 probable / likely schools. And I'm not into having a lottery or an unlikely, but if you want to just go for one, go max of one. Just throw it out there if you want to just go for one. But I generally am not a big fan. And so it's extremely important that students have a balanced list. And I see so many students that come with me with all these crazy selective schools of which they may not get into any, or all the way to the other extreme. They underestimate their viability as an applicant and they don't have a balanced list. The third thing would be not financially vetting schools. So not making sure that, we talked about this in length in episode 21, how to assess how much you can actually pay, figure out that exact number, figure out the parent portion, the student portion, using net price calculators, verifying that the net price calculators are accurate so that every school on your list you can afford. So you don't just get into schools you can't pay for. That would be number 3. Number 4 is selecting schools for the wrong reasons, because that girlfriend is going, or your friends are going, or the sports team is great, or they're always on ESPN, or only looking at schools you've only heard of and not considering schools you haven't heard of. So those are 1 through 4. Any thoughts on any of them?
I'm most nervous about number 3. I'm going to be honest. And that's the financial vetting, because
not financially vetting,
because we have been totally spoiled with our first. I'm going to Davidson College, and I'm not going to say it was easy, but I'm going to say it was one of the most, I would lean to say one of the probably the less stressful situations we'll probably be in, because just the resources that are available. And Janaea has made it ultra clear that she wants to go to a HBCU, and I just know that it's a different ball game. I just know that that's the reality of it. And I just got to get into that mode of really, like you say, digging and doing your homework on what is there, having that balanced list, what's affordable, who has the money, who may not have the money, how do you get some money, all of that. And because we're just not used to it, like it's just going to be new to us. So I am totally nervous about that. I'm just going to put it on out there.
Well, you know what, Anika, I will tell you, and that's just being honest, which we appreciate. But when I look at those first 4 I gave you, I would venture to say the majority of people that I work with, the majority make these mistakes. The majority don't put the research in their major or career. The majority don't have a balance list. The majority don't financially vet. And, if you don't need financial aid, that's fine. That wouldn't apply. But, some of these schools can be $75,000, and that's after taxes. And when people have multiple kids, I was talking to one of my clients this week, and he was telling me about someone he knows that makes $500,000 to $600,000 and doesn't know how he's going to afford college because he's got 4 kids. He's got 4 kids, and he would like for them to go to all the private schools. So even very wealthy people, if they don't have significant parent resources or a huge college fund, can struggle with the cost of college. And so and then going for the wrong reason. So those are extremely common. Now, let me give you the next 4. So number 5, not doing research on your schools, right? So that that the schools you're applying to are actually a match for who you are. I heard some great advice this week, Anika. A lot of colleges have a why us essay, or why this school essay. Some people call it that. So why are you interested in us, right? I've been helping students all week write those why us essays or why this school essays. But I heard a great idea, which is every student should write a why this school essay for every school they apply to really think through, why am I actually applying? And when you don't do the research on your schools, it comes through in your application. Yeah. So that's a very common mistake. Number 6, lack of attention to details, not proofreading essays, missing important emails, mistakes on your aid forms. Very common. Number 7, procrastination. Guess what, Anika? It is the 15th of October today. This is a day, a lot of early action. Deadlines are on October 15th, not as many as November 1st, but a lot are. And I hate to put some of my people on blast, but my phone and my email is blowing up with last second questions. Procrastinating, right? Procrastinating on every aspect of things. Procrastinating on the research, procrastinating on the application, procrastinating on the financial applications, procrastinating on the test prep strategy. Okay. And then number 8, I have not utilizing your regional rep or your territory manager. They are an incredible resource, and people don't take advantage of the regional admissions rep in all the ways that they can. So any of these stand out either for you personally or just your impression of the college admission process?
Yeah.
So that would be 5 through 8.
Let me tap on number 7, but in a different angle.
Okay. Procrastinating?
Yeah, this is the procrastination.
Yep.
But I don't. Okay, maybe this is me trying to make my excuse. I don't think so, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Time management. Mark, I just started reading this book last week on time. You Can Manage Your Time Better by Lucy. I'm sorry, I don't remember Lucy's last name, but it's an awesome book. And I put it on my little, so fascinating that I put it on my Instagram. And it's time management. I'm telling you, we're dealing with these kids, and you're working and you're trying to live your life and do all this stuff. And you look up and it's November. And then you look up and it's May. And then you look up and it's September. It's just like, it's crazy. You feel like you're in this time warp machine. And so I picked procrastination because I feel like maybe I need to own that a little bit. Maybe I need to own the procrastination piece. But it's just like time management, just in general, man. It's just off the charts. Like I'm so into it right now. And I'm seriously like in this hardcore study around it because I know there's some science around it, but it's so real. And that's just the one that's jumping out to me the most right now.
Well, you and a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And so the last 3 would be not utilizing your school counselor because they are an incredible resource. And they also have a pretty significant role in what they submit to the colleges. And if they don't know you, they can't advocate for you. And the number 10 is bad essays. Bad essays, and there's so many ways in which essays are bad. That could be a whole series unto itself, right? Everything from people telling it, not showing it, to of course the punctuation and the grammar, to not having a compelling narrative, to making someone else the star of the story and not yourself, and not bringing out your distinctive strengths. There's just so many aspects of the writing that isn't good with the essays. And then the last thing is poor course selection. So taking classes that do not set yourself up for success. So that is my list that I've been thinking about for the last month of the most common mistakes I see from all the students I work with. So what are your, between the last 3, not utilizing the school counselor, bad essays, and poor course selection, anyone you want to comment on there?
I'm going to go with poor course selection because, again, Mark, let me not digress into this time management thing, but trying to keep up with our kids in these darn course. I mean, you're talking to the counselor and you're emailing back and forth and you're trying to make sure you got it all together. But again, time is of the essence, and you got to take the time to pay attention to these courses and making sure that, like you said in the beginning, this is what I want to be, really focusing in on, really paying attention to what that child wants to pursue in the beginning so you can make the proper selections. It's so much of a process. I feel like that is the biggest one for me because it's so much more than that. It's the pre-planning that happens that leads into that course selection that requires you to really pay close attention as a parent. So that's me.
So I want to say something, because I'm focusing on the student errors here. And I think of all of the errors, the poor course selection is the one that I have the most compassion about. And the reason for that is this is so easy for this to happen, because schools have graduation requirements that are not consistent with what the college's expectations of what the students will take. Right. And I'll just give you an example. And I was emailing with a college admission counselor with a school counselor that we're doing joint counseling with at a boarding school in Massachusetts earlier today. So there are schools in this country that require 4 social science courses. 4. And there's some, and the counselor was saying it's almost impossible to take 4 here, given our natural curriculum and all the options that we have. Then there's the state of Georgia requires 4 sciences. Okay. If those of you heard episode 30, Cliff Thornton talks about how Wesleyan wants 4 foreign languages. And then lots of schools require 4 maths and 4 Englishes. And so there's not a lot of students who are being told about some of these different requirements. And it's just so easy for a student not to take the courses that they need. And it's so easy even for advice to say, you really don't need to do that. So I'm very, very, very and once again, the more selective the school, the more scrutiny will be on your rigor.
Right. Yep.
So we share these we're not trying to be Debbie Downer over here. I feel like we're being Debbie Downers.
Debbie Knowledge is Power lifter up.
There we go. There we go. We need an alliteration for that one. Kenny Knowledge is King. Kenny Knowledge is King. There we go.
Hello.
That was weak.
I'll take it.
Whatever floats your boat. Friends, I'm going to be completely transparent with you. Anika and I recorded episode 38 on Monday, October 15th. And today is October 17th. I was just looking over my notes and I'm like, oh my goodness, I arguably missed the 2 most important things. So I'm adding a 12th mistake and a 13th mistake. We have said repeatedly on this podcast that the majority of colleges make decisions exclusively based on 2 factors, your transcript, your grades, and your test scores. And therefore, it behooves me to have 1 point at least related to testing and another related to grades. So the point for testing is simply this: poor test prep strategy, which is number 12. Now that could mean you pick the ACT when you should do the SAT. That could mean you start too late. That could mean you do group test prep when you should do individual test prep, or you should be doing one-on-one online test prep, or it could mean you don't do enough practice tests. You don't dissect and analyze those tests and learn from those tests. There are a number of different things and others that relate to poor test prep strategy. And the 13th point is just poor grades, not taking your grades seriously. So one wise sage once said, getting a low grade is like adding 50 extra pounds on your body. It's very, very hard to get off. In other words, poor grades make it very difficult for you to turn it around and have a high GPA. So point number 12, poor test prep strategy. Point number 13, not taking grades seriously. Listeners, Anika and I often talk about how you help us in our show. This interview you're about to hear completely we owe to one of our listeners who gave us this suggestion, and Anika and I loved it and we ran with it. So credit to you, Kim in Los Angeles, for this outstanding idea. And listeners, you're going to enjoy our second interview with a student.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I am super excited. This is only the second student that we've ever had interviewed. We had a student on episode 17, and today we have Chika Nwosu as our guest. Welcome to Your College Bound Kid, Chika.
Hello.
So Chika, let me tell you a little story about how Chika came to us today. And I have to give a huge shout out to Kim in Southern California, one of our listeners, who said, you know what I would love for you guys to do? Could you interview a student now? Let her or him share their current situation, have them come back again after they've made their final decision in May, and then have them come back a third time 1 year after they've completed their first year of college. And Anika and I thought that would be a fantastic idea. And guess what? Chika is our student. So that's what we're going to do. So this will be the first of 3 parts with Chika. And so Chika, why don't you kick it off by telling us a little bit about your upbringing, a little bit about your family, whatever you want to share.
Okay, so I'm applying for college. I am a senior at Mill Creek High School, and I live with my mom, my grandma, and my sister. My mom is from Nigeria, and so she came to America when she was an adult, and so she's been raising us here in Georgia for pretty much all my life. I have my younger sister, Lillian. She's 14. She's in high school with me now, too. So it's just been, just without my dad being in my life, it's really just been me, my mom, and my grandma kind of working together to raise me and my sister. So, yeah.
Awesome. And what does your mom do in the day?
My mom, Her occupation, she is a dentist here in Georgia.
Fantastic. In Georgia. Great. So, Chika, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about your high school? Tell us what your high school is like. Explain anything you want to share about the high school you attend.
I go to Mill Creek High School, and it's a roughly large high school, much larger than most high schools surrounding me. It's about, when I started freshman year, it was about 4,000 kids. We've dropped now my senior year to about 3,800. It's really easy to get lost in the high school if you're not really involved, but I've made it a goal to be involved, so I feel like it's a second home to me.
Yeah, that's a huge high school. That's like bigger than a lot of colleges. Almost 4,000. It's actually one of the biggest schools in the whole state of Georgia here. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what you are involved in? As you mentioned, you've made it your point to get involved. Share the various extracurriculars and activities you've been involved in from your freshman year up till now your senior year.
One of the few clubs I've been in all 4 years is probably Beta Club, which is a service-based club, student council, which is now my senior year. I've been able to become the senior class president, and I've been able to do Talon, which is a leadership club at my school that I've been in since freshman year. And now, once I was a sophomore, I was able to become the president of that club through GSLT, which is like a county-wide club. And they have various students from each high school in the county get to be a part of it. And we get to hear like from speakers from all around the world, and in hopes of us taking it back to our high schools to kind of influence and build the high school towards more leadership oriented environment.
So what made you select those activities, Chika?
When I'm joining clubs, I really try to go for clubs that make an impact on the school, help the student body, and like grow me as a person. Personally, for clubs like GSLT and Talon, they grow me, and I also get to grow other people. And NHS and Beta, I get to serve my community. So I try to find clubs that they benefit me in terms of growing myself as a person, but also I get to turn back and help those in my community and in my school.
Good. Great. So Chika, listeners, actually was referred to me from another dentist client that I have. And those dentists, they all know each other. And so, we've actually only been working together for a little bit less than 3 months now. We'll get a little bit later into some of the things we're doing. But why don't you talk about what you're looking for in a college experience?
I'm really looking for a place that I can call home again. Being in my high school for 4 years and getting really involved, I'm gonna be sad to leave because I've invested so much into it. So going into whichever college I go to, I really want it to be a place where there's grounded people. It's not too large where we're just numbers going in and out. I want to create a home there at my high school, at my college, where I can meet my professors and we have a one-on-one interaction. They know my name, I know their name. I want to meet people who share my interests and my passions and really just dive into the person that I'm going to be now into my adult life.
Fantastic. So why don't you tell our listeners the colleges that you are applying to? Why don't you share the colleges you're applying to and discuss, what it is about these schools that, drew your attention?
So there's a bit of, my list is kind of long. I'm applying to Davidson College in North Carolina, Emory University here in Georgia, Duke University, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Case Western, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, UGA, Mercer, Washington University, the University of Miami, and the University of Richmond. So just in terms of coming up with a list, I'm really looking, these colleges all kind of have a really strong medicine program because I am interested in going into medical school following college. So just having a strong pre-med program, science program was really, really important to me. And then I don't want to be, just because I've grown up, it's really been mostly me and my mom and my sister, my grandma. I don't want to be too far away from home. So most of these are kind of roughly close near my home that I live in right now. And then also just kind of the environment is kind of homely in all of these. There's a lot of these schools sometimes have good interactions, like Davidson is really small. So, and coming from a big high school like Mill Creek of 4,000, Davidson is like 2,000. So it's a much smaller environment. and then helping me, like another college on my list is University of Richmond, which has a really good leadership. Like they really like leadership and they're really involved with leadership sort of thing. So that's a place where I can really envision myself being like happy and growing as a person. So all of these colleges trying to, one, help me academically in terms of their medicine program and their pre-med program, but socially wise, a place where I can be comfortable and call home.
And which of those schools have you had a chance to visit so far?
Not a lot of them, to be honest. I can say that I visited Davidson, Emory, and I believe UGA. Most of them I'm looking forward to visiting in the upcoming weeks and next semester.
So would you say you've been doing internet research? How have you been learning? I mean, I know I've been sharing some things, but besides what I've shared, what have you been using to learn more about the schools?
Just doing online research for the most part. A lot of these schools have virtual tours, and I try to use the virtual tours to try to get a sense and feel of the schools.
Good. So let's talk about a little bit about how you've done in school, and just for our listeners to know, I'm not putting Chika on the spot here. She's kind of agreed when we talked about this to be really transparent. So why don't you share sort of how you've done in school when it comes to, grades, testing, class rank, any of that kind of stuff?
I've done fairly well so far in my high school career. I have a weighted 4.0. My class rank is about, I think, 40 out of about 864 students. And I have taken my SAT. I've taken it about twice. In one sitting, I scored a 770 on the math portion and then a 670 on the reading section to give me my high score of 1440.
So did you self-study? Did you take test prep? Did you do one-on-one group test prep on your own? Did you just go in and wing it? How did you get your scores? How did you get your scores, Chika?
I wish I could say I winged it. I've done a lot of self-study and I've taken the SAT classes and a lot of practice SAT classes. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't actually really think all of those helped me all that too much, because a lot of the times I would take the practice and I'd get the same score over and over, which it wasn't a score that I was happy with. And so I got the Princeton Review Guide book for the SAT, and it was the last SAT in June. I chose one so that school would be out and I'd have a lot of time to study on my own. So using that Princeton Review Guide book and like the month before, I really just learned the material and like took a lot of practice tests like that month before to get ready for that June SAT that I took.
So you're an example of what I've said before. I think there is great self-study and great materials out there. It's just a unique student that has the personal discipline to be able to hunker down and learn on their own without the structure of a class or a one-on-one tutor. And even, when you encounter mental blocks and you're not able to comprehend the material to be able to work through that. And not every student is like Chika. I'm aware of that. It was one of the reluctances I had to bring you on, Chika. I don't want everybody to think that every student is like you, like presenting your senior class and doing all this really well. But if you know Chika, her smile will light up any room she walks in. So I knew that would translate well to an interview that we would have, which is great. And what about AP exams? Have you taken any of them? And if so, how did you score on your APs?
I've taken a little more than a couple, actually. I've taken, I think, about maybe 6 so far. And I think my AP scores show more reflective how I am as a student. I'm not the person who just wings everything and gets the highest scores. I've taken AP exams such as AP Physics, and I didn't do so well on that. I got a 2 on those. But then I've taken AP Chemistry and AP US History. I got 3s on those. I've taken the BC Calc exam. I got a 3 on that exam and a AB subscore of 4. I took my AP Psychology, which is one of the subjects that I really did love. I got a 5 on that exam. I took AP Stat, AP exam. I got a 4 on that one as well.
So you can see the full range from actually 2 all the way to 5, on your AP exams. Great. So how do we work together, Chika? What is our process? What are you and I doing together?
For the most part,
process?
we work on my college application in terms of essay and writing, because I think that's one of the things that I came in lacking. In terms of filling out my resume, I had the test scores already and I had the GPA and stuff like that. But in terms of how do I get my passions and leadership and helping others to reflect onto my applications for writing. So for the most part, you've really helped me be able to show the college admission boards what kind of person I am and what I'm bringing to their college.
Let's go back to what parts of the college process would you say are exciting you, Chika?
Honestly, I think the process of writing essays and all the questions they ask about what do you bring to Davidson, what do you bring to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, how do you embrace the Mercer mission statement? Kind of those self-reflecting questions kind of growing me as a person on what do I want in my college. It's not always this school has the highest, this school is the most selective, this school only selects certain kids. It's what kind of school has the environment and the home that I want to go to. And it's just kind of showing me what kind of person I am and what I'm looking forward to for the next 4 years in my educational career.
Now, what parts would you say have been stressful in the college process?
Stressful, I think I think most likely not even the filling out the simple information isn't really stressful, but just the idea of having to write so much, I think gets overwhelming. Once you just thinking about it, it's like, oh, I don't have enough time. And then when you do that one day, sit down, it's really exhilarating and I love it. But just the idea of writing all these like supplemental essays and the personal essays and the FAFSA and the deadlines, like all of that sometimes gets overwhelming. So sometimes that's kind of not so fun for me.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
The recommended resource for episode 38 is the website youvisit.com. That's youvisit.com. Youvisit.com is hands down, unequivocally my favorite website for virtual college tours. And I've surveyed my clients after sharing several options for video and virtual tours with them, and it is their favorite website as well. After you go to youvisit.com, use the drop-down box to click the Student Campus Tours tab, and bam, you will have engaging 360-degree panoramic tours of over 600 colleges, and they're adding more colleges and universities all the time. These tours have a tour guide who will talk to you and describe the main features of the college. But unlike a real tour, you can control when the tour guide stops and where you go on tour. There is no substitute for an actual college tour to get the emotional feel and the zeitgeist of a college. But youvisit.com is the closest experience, in my opinion, you will get to an actual visit. We will now return to my interview with Chika. And one thing we should share with our listeners, because some people may be thinking, Chika, you're, president of all these organizations, you have all this leadership, and you have a really strong top 5% of your class, academic performance. They might be surprised some other schools are not on your list. One of the things that we were very intentional about is applying to schools that had the potential to give Chika a tremendous financial aid package. Knowing medical school is ahead, knowing you've got a sister going through with college. So we avoided some schools that we knew had no potential to give merit financial aid money, and so any thoughts at all about the financial component of the process, Chika?
I was actually kind of learning a lot of new stuff starting the college application process, because just looking at it from I am going to medical school in terms of the cost of tuition they're giving me, it's not just the flat rate for the 4 years. It's every year I'm going to have to pay a certain amount of money. So just looking at the different schools and kind of measuring even though I may love one school more, it's all down to what's financially possible for my mom, because it is all on her to pay for me. And for the next 8 years, I'm going to college. And then right after I finish college, my sister will be in college and I'll be in medical school. So it's just really a long-term puzzle of what's the most financially intelligent option in terms of colleges for me.
And Chick, I can say you're like a lot of families that I work with, whereas you won't qualify for any financial aid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your family can just cut a $70,000 check, right?
Yes.
You know,
I wish.
for for 4 years, for 4 years. So let's talk about your fear. What fears, if any, do you have about college?
Um, Fears for college would one just be the cost of college becoming too overwhelming for my mom, but for me, just going to a college and not really fitting in or making an impact. I don't want to go into college being a number. I go in, I go out, and nothing has changed. I want to go into college finding the career that I have dead set. This is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. I want to find people who also share my same passions in terms of helping people, making the world a better place, the medical field. And then I just want to find like long-term friends that we went through the 4 years together. We did the college thing together. This is my second family. So I really just want to go. I'm really scared that if I choose the wrong college, that it's not what I think it is. The environment isn't that friendly. The professors aren't that kind. I don't have any clubs that are along the lines of my passion. So just not feeling at home in my college is probably my biggest fear.
And is there any activity or area that you know for sure you want to get involved in when you go to college?
Yes, I want to get involved in any outreach, leadership, service kind of clubs because it's one thing that I'm very, very passionate about. I really do enjoy it. Not it helps other people, but it just makes me happy knowing that I'm making others happy and I'm making their day. But besides the service and the leadership, I really do want to join a club that along my religious affiliations, I would really like to have like a church group, a small group because I won't be in my local church. I really don't want to be away, like for my relationship with God to a weekend just because I'm going away out of state or an hour away from home.
That's very wise of you. You know that? Very, very, very wise of you. Yeah, very wise of you. And what's one thing that you think you've learned about the college process, Chika, that perhaps you didn't know? You know, anything that you've learned or you're learning, any way in which it's a little different than perhaps you envisioned it?
I think it's really ironic, even this year of all the years is the year I'm applying to college because I've learned that the college application process it's not white and black. There's a lot of gray, there's a lot of emotions. It's real people reading real people's essays, and it's like the people reading the essays and admitting kids, they want the best kids for their schools. And I really think I really got to understand what they're going through because as a senior, I've become officers of a lot of the clubs that I'm a part of, and a lot of them have application processes. And for like the one club I'm in, Talent, there's an application process, and we have to put people in different committees. And I'm in charge of one of the elementary schools. I'm the contact for that elementary school, Ivy Creek. So in terms of having students want to mentor and outreach, I want the best students for my elementary kids. So I really got to it really enlightened me because that's exactly how the college application process is. The people reading the essays and people admitting want the best students for their schools. So it's like, it's not just I'm the smartest, it's I want to make a difference at the college. I want to improve the environment and I want to better the college as I attend it.
Fantastic, fantastic. So in winding down here, Chika, you know I never tell our guests this because they might not agree to come on, but I always put my guests on the hot seat. And that means we're going to try to personalize you even a little more than you've already been really transparent with us, which is great. But I want to make it a little fun and a little lighthearted here. So, what is your favorite food?
I'd say pancakes or waffles, anything with carbs, really.
That's a lot of choices, carbs. What is your favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show? Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay.
Good old
And,
classic.
and what is the best book that you've read?
Oh, easy. It's Legends. It's a trilogy. It's kind of dystopian novel. I love it.
Cool, cool. What is your best dose of advice for students out here who are listening? Maybe you got a 10th grader or an 11th grader, and they want some sage advice from you. What would you tell them?
My advice is one, don't procrastinate. The the college application process seems scary and it seems like it's a lot, but it's really all these questions, like I said earlier, the selection process isn't black and white. It's not computer generalized. It's real people reading real essays. So just be yourself in terms of what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy? What drives you and what makes you wake up in the morning and keep going, and just bundle that up and put that in an essay is what I could really say, is make your personality stand through whatever you're writing.
And something, you didn't quite put it this way, but something I tell students all the time, which is be your natural self, your authentic self, and select colleges that will appreciate you for who you are, as opposed to feeling that you need to change and contort yourself into somebody differently to appeal to what you think the colleges want. And so I kind of feel like you said that in a different way. I just took a circuitous path to say kind of the same thing you said there, I think. Mm-hmm. But listen, Chika, this has been fantastic. We really appreciate you coming on. This is the first of the trilogy, the first 1, 2, and 3 parts of the Chika story. And so I really appreciate your transparency, because next time when you come back in about 7 months from now, you're going to share with us where you got in, where you didn't get in. By then, you would have had a chance to visit a lot of schools. You can tell us what you liked and didn't like about your schools. And ultimately, you can tell us where you're going and why you picked the school you picked. What do you think?
Yes, I'm excited for that, too, to figure out where I'm getting in, where I'm going, where I'm going to spend the next 4 years of my life.
Well, I just thank you, because I think just sort of tracing your journey is going to benefit like hundreds, if not thousands of listeners. And it's going to be exciting. And then even having you come back after your first year in college to kind of tell us what you've learned. So I'm excited about this. And I just want to thank you. And you probably got some homework to do. So I'm going to let you get back to your studies or some leadership activity or something. You're always doing all the leadership things. But say hi to your mom for me. Say hi to your sister. And thank you so much for being our guest on Your College Bound Kid today.
No problem.
Wasn't that bad, was it?
In next week's news, the New York Times has written about feeling suicidal. Students turned to their college and they were told to go home. Please stay tuned for that. And we'll be in chapter 39 of 171 answers. And we're talking about we're answering the question, what is the ACT? And next week's question is about which parent of those that are divorced should be listed as the primary on the FAFSA application. And Mark's interview next week is with Mr. Brendan Bernard. He is the director of college counseling at Dairyfield School. And they're talking about 20 mistakes that parents, listen up. 20 mistakes parents make in the college process. Don't miss it. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you find this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send it to someone you know who could really use this information. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. Marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. And Your College Bound Kid is produced by Esteban Sartho. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you would like to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text at area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on each show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.